How you doing, guys? Welcome back to NRL Fantasy Analysis. Just want to jump in here and go through a really big video about our cash cows for the season. So I'm going to put it all into one space. There's going to be about 50 players, so there's going to be a lot of value in here. I just wanted you to be able to use this as a tool to go back over the next few weeks and work out which are going to be the best cash cows to fit your side for each of the positions. So as I said, all going to be in the one space. And if you find you get a lot out of this, please hit the like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. I hope you enjoy this one, guys. So I'm going to start with Jacob Liddle. We're going to try and make him as clear and concise as possible. I think Liddle is our best cash cow of the year. So if you don't have him in the team, I think you're missing out. He will get the starting position. It looks like he might get Simpkin on the bench there to take a few minutes. But when he's priced at 23 and he's got a bunch of scores with 60 minutes in the 50s, even with a try in one of them, but you can see his point per minute is fairly good. He's got a 39 minutes for 42. He's got a 34 for 31, a 32 minutes for 17, but a 19 minutes for 26. So really strong in that, and you'd expect scores of at least somewhere 40 plus, which puts him 15 to 18 points undervalued, which would make him a couple hundred K. So I think he's really a really easy one in the hooking position to make you a lot of money. So he's my number one choice in our cash cows. Our next one's going to be Dane Laurie. This one's obviously pending if he gets a starting position or not, but at price of 16, I think he at least average in the 30s at a minimum. He's someone that's really electric in attack and actually defended fairly well as well. So if he gets that number one position, I think he's a must-have in your side as well. For those that saw the trials on the weekend, scored a couple of tries and looks really fast and is an exciting young prospect in our game. So I think Laurie is a must-have, only if he gets selected. If he doesn't get selected, then I think you're just going to have to wait and bring him in at some point later in the year, especially with Mbai waiting there to get a spot. So all these guys are going to be under 400k, guys. Anyone over that, I've left out. There was Ben Murdoch-Masilla's 405, and I decided to leave him out of this one. But Matt Lodge, priced at 29 average for 390k. I think he's a really good option and very safe option in your side, given the fact that he should be able to score at least a 40 average, getting closer to 45 to 50 minutes with a nice PPM of 0.87 over his time. If he's getting 50 minutes, he's going to be scoring in the 40s and making you 150k there while scoring you well, and you can use him in your starting team or on your four-man bench. So he's someone that has the pedigree to score well. He's got games here just in last year where he got decent minutes and scored in the 40s with one at 32 there. But if you look in past seasons, he's got some really high scores in the 40s, 50s, and even 60 when he gets good minutes. So especially over the first few weeks with Payne Haas out, he should see some high minutes. He works hard. He's a little bit more of like Aiden Tolman build, obviously a little bit bigger than him, but that's slower, sort of just tackles hard, runs hard, nothing too flashy. So I think he's a really simple, easy option that you don't have to worry too much about in your side. Jaden Brailey is going to be our next one at 410k. I think he's going to be a great option if he gets the 80-minute role. If he doesn't get the 80-minute role, I'm worried about him and his prospects because I think he needs the 80 to be able to average at around that 0.5, 0.6 ppm, which gets him to his 2020 average of 41 and makes him close to 150k there. He's owned by 21% of people, so a lot of people are thinking that's going to be where he's at. As you can see from his past games, if he does get 60 minutes, he can get the 40 average as well. But I've been feeling much safer with his prospects if he does get the 80 minutes. So another one that's really safe in the hooking role to make you some money if he gets that spot. Someone I'm really interested in is Spencer Leniu. So I think what we've worked out is he's going to be taking the spot of Moses Leota from last season. How good's this? Slow and working. Come on, internet. There we go. So he's gonna be taking the Moses Leota role. You can see his minutes last year were really down. He's getting a max minutes there of 30 across the season. Scored 31 in that, 34 in 28 minutes, 45 in 29. He's a PPM beast at pretty much 1 point a minute. So if he can get closer to that 35 minutes, which I don't think is unreasonable, he's at least 10 to 12 points undervalued. And if he happens to get 40 or 45 minutes, I think he's going to be a really, really good cash cow for your side. Someone in the middle that can cover at a decent, to get you a decent average if you do need to play him as well. And at 307k, I think is a really, really good option in your side. So he comes in at number 5 in our top 10. So yeah, guys, we're going to be going through a top 10, and then we're going to go through each position and the leftovers, heading from hooker down, hooker through mid to edge, half, centre, and wing fullback there. Connor Watson comes in. at 323k, priced at 24. He's going to be starting at lock, and you'd be expecting somewhere between 45 to 60 minutes. I'm going to bank on about 50 minutes, and you can see what he can do, even just off the bench, only doing okay with 42 and 44 minutes in that role last year with 34 and 35, which already puts him 10 points undervalued. Very simply, and if he gets any more minutes than that, I think he's just going to be an even better option. He looks free. He looked like he was running well on the weekend, coming back off his Achilles injury. So I think the only worry with him is he going to be able to stay on the park? And if he does, I think he's going to score great for your side. We're going to talk about one now that's going to be Leniu. He's going to be a centre and a wing fullback. You're just going to have to wait for his dual position when the team lists are announced. So probably going to be on the Wednesday just before the first game on Thursday, which is a little bit annoying for making up your teams right now if you're thinking about putting him in. But just slot him on the bench or in the wing fullback at the moment just to test out how your team's going to look. Scored 35 on the weekend with a try, and he looked solid. In defence, I think was the most important thing for him. He tackled really well, didn't miss any tackles, and then looked strong in attack. He's looked like he's transitioned to centre nicely after playing a bunch of games in the fullback last year, and scoring okay in a few of them there. So I think he's someone that's on the way up in terms of his actual footy prospects, and this should translate to closer to at least a 30 average for Tessie in the centre position that he's going to play. And at 263k, he's not going to take up much of your cap, which you can spend that elsewhere, which I think will be really helpful. But then move on to someone like Jordan Riki at 344k, priced at 26. If he's going to be getting the starting position, I think he's going to be a really good option. Obviously, there's a good chance that when Haas comes back, they move things around, but if he's getting the starting position early, that means he should have a prominent role in the side. If he happens to only play 3 games and then gets dropped completely, then that's unfortunate, but you would at least get those price rises in the meantime. But I feel like Riki's going to be someone that will play a decent part in this Broncos team, especially with them not planning to be as good as some other teams. You'd expect them to give these younger guys a bit of a crack and see how they hold themselves in the league. And you can see when he gets big minutes, he's got some point scoring opportunities, along with you saw that in the All-Stars game and also their trial on the weekend. Owned by 32% of people. I think you'd be silly if he's starting to not have him in your side. All right, a couple more to go. We'll go for Jake Averillo for this one. Someone that's going to cover the half and the centre position. So we're all going to be spending a little bit less money in the centres, for example. So I think a combination of Leniu and Averillo is going to be decent, hoping for the fact that he plays round 1. And if he doesn't play round 1, I'm probably going to leave him out on my side, just for the fact he might have to fight himself back into there. If the Bulldogs start well or not, we're not exactly sure, but owned by 27%. Dual position coverage, priced at 23, only 302k, a young up-and-coming player. I don't think I have to say too much more. If he gets a spot at 5'8", you can see what this couple of scores that he had at 40 and 34, which puts him at least 10 points undervalued, and there's not much more to say about him. Just wanting to hope that he gets his spot. And our last one, a little bit more of a speculation because we're not exactly sure how he's going to get a position, especially with Croker looking to be back for round 1. Cade Cuss won't be out for too long. You've got Curran, you've got DCE. Where's Schuster going to play? But he has a lot of talent. What we've seen from the trials and his game last year, he looks solid, and you'd be expecting scores of at least 30 plus if he plays in this Manly side. And for a team that is expected not to do as well this year, you would expect Schuster to play at some point in the year. So I'm putting out the fact that I'm not sure if he'll play a lot of games. He might play 8 to 10 games, but when he does play, I think he's going to score well and make you some money. So have him on the watch list, and if he starts round 1, he'll be owned by a lot more than 12.5% of teams. So there's my top 10 guys. We're now going to quickly go through the rest of the guys that didn't make that top 10, and we'll start up with the hookers in Jake Simpkin. Guys, if you're enjoying it, hit the like button. I really appreciate that for YouTube to get this out to as many people as possible. Jake Simpkin didn't play at all last year. Scored a try in the trial on the weekend. Should be spelling Liddle and getting sort of, I'd expect, between 20 and 30 minutes, which he should beat his price of 17 and make a little bit of money. But I've seen a few people that are starting with Liddle and Simpkin, and I'm not sure if that's a great option at this stage. But if Liddle happens to go down and gets injured, I expect Simpkin to come in and do well. You have guys like Billy Walters who are coming back and might do it right as well, but Simpkin is an option to keep in the black book as well. All right, Koloamatangi, just priced a bit higher, and that's the reason why he didn't make my top 10 list. Just the fact that we're not exactly sure on his position, and priced at 29, he does have to score well to make you a fair bit of money. He has to get closer to average of 40, and the question is, will he be able to do that if he's playing on an edge? He scores a lot better, if you can see, these interchange games are through the middle, and gives him a PPM of 0.84. I'd expect that PPM to drop a little bit on an edge. He is a little bit more of a chance of scoring tries on an edge, but I feel like his base stats are gonna drop, which is what we saw in the trial match. Even obviously Rabbitohs did really well and scored a lot of points, so there was less base stats in that game. But on an edge, he should drop a little bit in that category and hopefully bumped up by a few attacking stats. So he's definitely someone on my radar, and if he gets a starting spot, I think he's a good player for most teams. Move on to Utoikamanu. All right, so Harry Grant's injured. Brandon Smith moves into the starting side for the first bunch of weeks, and I feel like this gives a bunch of extra minutes to people like Kamikamica. You can see what happens in his first few games. He got to start at prop and score really well, but when he's on the interchange, he's going to be used as an impact player. Nelson's playing decent minutes these days, and he can come into that starting side with Bromwich or Christian Welsh. So they have a plethora of options there, and so I don't see the minutes coming thick and fast for someone like Utoikamanu. I'm expecting somewhere between 30 and 40 minutes, and being priced at 28, he has to score 35 to 40 to make him worthwhile. And yes, I see him having really good games where he might score a try or something like that, but as a total average, I see him getting up to maybe 450 to 500k max. But I don't see that as a great option when you've got other guys possibly to come in. Leeson Armour looks like he won't be getting the starting job, and that's a bit painful for what we'd be looking for in our teams at this stage. Price at 27 is really cool, especially when you look at what kind of scores he's done in the past, but I just don't see him getting the minutes in a pack that's going to be really big. There's guys like Murdoch Masila, Eli Katoa in there. You've got Tohu Harris trying to get minutes, Adam Fanua-Blake. So many guys that are going to demand big minutes, especially Fanua-Blake. He's someone that played big minutes. I just don't see him getting those minutes off the bench and therefore maybe averaging 30 or 35, which I don't think is enough for someone like Armour. Let's move on. We've got a bunch of middle forwards at the moment, and these are all just going to be role based, which we aren't sure at the moment. A bunch of these guys are just going to be off the bench, and just depends how their bench looks, if they've got a bench hooker, and yeah, etc. etc. But moving on with Corey Jensen, had a bit of an injury affected time last year, and you can see he has some scores when he averages around 40 plus minutes of 28, 35, 33, and 40, priced at 26. So he has some room to move. He did look really good on the weekend. He's a big, strong boy, and you'd expect that if he can get those minutes, then he's close to 8 to 10 points undervalued. But we're not sure on his role at the moment, and that's why I'm not going to be telling anyone to pick him up at this stage. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Cowboys pack, because they've got Maguire coming back, and also McLean. So you'd expect his role to drop a little bit. But there are some minutes with Asiata being gone to take, and I think that between him, Lockie Burr, and Peter Hola are going to be those guys. So we'll talk about Hola now. Didn't play too many minutes on the weekend, so didn't get to see him a lot. But priced at 18, you'd want him to get closer to 35 to 40 minutes with his nice PPM of 0.94 for him to make some money. But as I said, there's a few guys on that bench that are going to be wanting those middle forward minutes, and not sure if he's going to get them. But again, we'll have to find out. Looks like there should be a bench hooker on the Cowboys, and so there should be some time for the middle forwards, especially with Taumalolo dropping his minutes from what Peyton's been saying. So Jack Hetherington, he's not someone that I want to be talking about too much. Priced at 24, just doesn't do that well in fantasy, and he got dominated on the weekend. I don't think he's a great option. I don't want to talk about him any further. People I think that are much better options that just need some minutes is someone like Daniel Alvaro. 41 minutes on the weekend for 38 points. Has a beautiful PPM of 1.02 over his career. Priced at 22. If he can get anywhere over 30 minutes, then he's going to be a really good option in anyone's side at a point a minute. Looking at close to 10 to 15 points undervalued there, which you can see in the past he's done really well in the Eels pack, playing big minutes, 40 to 50 minutes, and scoring a point a minute. So someone to keep on the radar, along with Faamausili, so both from the same side. He was looking good on the weekend until he got knocked out at the 20-minute mark for 19 points. So again, very close to that point a minute. His PPM's a little bit less, but just didn't get the necessary minutes he would have wanted at the Roosters last year, which you can see he had a couple of games there at 33 minutes, 50 minutes, and 42 for 24, 43, and 34, which puts him a fair bit undervalued at price at 22. So again, we need to find out what kind of minutes these Dragons forwards are going to get, and then we can think about someone like him. Someone who just missed out on the top 10 list, just based on his price solely, is Stefano from the Tigers, and he's someone who's priced at 18 and only got a few games last year, but looks strong, big and strong in those games that he played, even in limited minutes. But at a PPM of 1.16, he's someone that's really interesting if he can get closer to 30 minutes. I wouldn't expect him to continue that PPM, but somewhere closer to 1 would be great. Working hard in that 30 minutes to be, getting scores in the 30 or just above, to be sort of 12 to 15 points undervalued. And if he's getting a spot on that Tigers bench, you should expect him to play some decent minutes, especially with guys like James Tarmow there who only play a low 40s minutes a night. So him and Offhand Gowie is going to play some decent minutes, but there's a fair few minutes to go around, given the fact that we don't expect Alex Twile to play the 80. And then there should be a few minutes on their edges as well, with Leilua playing 80, and then Garner likely not to play the full 80, but we'll see on that. As I said, a lot of this is going to depend on where teams are at and what kind of bench they're selecting. If are they bringing on a utility, etc. etc. Franklin Pele is another interesting one. People have been talking about him this year. He's got 12.6% ownership. Another big fella in the Sharks pack. He's touted to get a bench spot, but we'll have to see. And if he does, he might be a slow burn cash cow. But we don't know too much about him at this stage. Let's move on to the second row forwards, and someone like Josh Curran's a very interesting one. Played really strong on the weekend, but priced at 18 is perfect for an edge forward coverage on the bench, especially when someone like Sean Blore is down injured at the moment. If Curran happens to get a bench spot, I think is very interesting to bring into your side, especially when there's a chance, for him to get a start in the trial means something. It means that they think highly of him, and he played in the All-Stars game. That he's got a bit of footy into him lately, and I think that he has the chance to do really well if he happens to get some good minutes. And there's a chance that if there's some injuries as well, he could come in and start on an edge and score really well. So he's someone that's definitely on my radar at a nice PPM of 0.88 in the limited time that he's played. So someone really interesting to think about there and pop on your watch list. We've spoken about Sean Blore a lot. 246. If he comes back and gets a starting spot, like there's a chance that he will, I think that he's going to be a great option. Just at the moment with him missing the first bunch of games, someone like Garner could come in and do really well, and then it's very hard for Blore to get that spot. He might come off the bench in the middle again, and we'll just have to keep an eye on him with where he's at. All right, another just short and sharp one. Brodie Jones played a bunch of games last year. Got a 54 in a full game in round 3 when they were very undermanned, and scored really well. And then his PPM wasn't as strong as you go along the ranks there. A bunch of games there, 26 minutes for 9 points, a decent game of 33 minutes for 31. So if he gets some time, or if he happens to get a spot or a chance on the edge to play, then I think he can do really well at 263, but not someone we want to think about too much at the moment. Jack Gosiewski, priced at 21. He got the start on the weekend, so it's going to be between him and Andrew Davey, it looks like, of who's going to get the start. And you can see that in his big minute games, he's got a big minute game for 2 tries, an 80-minute game, 1 try for 28 points. He's got a 40-minute game for 20 points for the try. He's not very fantasy relevant. So if he gets a spot, I wouldn't want to be thinking about him, just for the fact that he's always been chopped and changed, and there's every chance that Davey could get the spot, which we'll talk about here. I think has a lot more potential, being priced at 27. And you look at a couple of his games when he played big minutes last year, he got 250s just basically from base stats. In a 70-minute game, he got a try assist, line break assist to help him out. So if he gets a spot, I think it's safe that he gets good game time, because Gosiewski they use a little bit as a utility. And yeah, at the moment we're just not sure of his game time. And being 364 is a slightly awkward price if we're not exactly sure what his role is going to be. Corey Harawira Naira. Hard one to say at 310k. He's stood down at the moment. If he comes back and gets a chance at that edge spot, then great. He's going to be undervalued. But now that he's stood down and he's missing some time, I'd say if Hudson Young does really well, he's just going to keep his spot. So that's all we want to say with him at the moment. We spoke about Koloamatangi. It looks like Host is a good chance also of getting that edge spot, but if he does, he's not really worth it at 354k, price at 26. You can see his scores here. He has to score tries for him to do well. He gets 65 to 70 minutes, and he has scores in the mid to high 30s. An 80-minute game of 29. A try save at 80 minutes, a lock for 41. So he's not really exciting at his awkward price. If it was like 260, you'd think about him, but not at that price. All right, so I already spoke about Riki. Croker. All right, so we move on to our halves now. And this is someone who's a fairly interesting option. It looks like he's going to be ready for round one, and if he is, I find him to be someone that's a decent chance of making some money. And the issue we have with him is his PPM of 0.44, and that is him spending a fair bit of time in the halves. But you can see last year he came off and spent some time at hooker for 18 minutes for 12, 22 for 16, 19 minutes for 14, 16 for 19, 30 for 19. So he makes him a really interesting option across that year. PPM's a little bit low, and if he's going to be getting somewhere between 50 to 60 minutes, I see him as being able to make at least 10 to 15 points and a couple 100k. But if he's going to get 30 to 40 minutes off the interchange bench again, then he's not someone you want to talk about. But that PPM is a little bit worrying, but only owned at 1.3%. If he gets that starting number 9, I think he's going to be owned by a lot more people come the start of the season. Tex Hoy. Knights have a decent start to the year. He's priced at 23. It'd be nice if he was priced just under 20, but I think he has the opportunity to average closer to 30, 37 to 40 over the first bunch of games, but is that enough games to warrant trading him out, so bringing him in at the start and trading him out over that time? I'm not exactly sure. So I feel like at 314, there's a couple of cheaper guys in Tessie New, Jake Averillo, these types of guys in those bottom positions, Dane Laurie, that are going to be better. But if none of them pop up, then Tex might be a decent option there. Matty Moylan, he looked pretty slick the other day. We just know that him as a player usually looks good, is very injury prone, is always someone that's getting the second last pass, which doesn't get him the results, and he's not going to be kicking it all in general play. So his stats going to have to come from tackles and his run meters with the odd tackle break here and there, and maybe a try assist or two. But I can see him averaging close to 25 to 30, which I just don't think is enough for this type of player. So that's all we'll say on him. Dylan Walker's an interesting one at 317k. Looks like he's going to be out in the centres, and in a Manly team that isn't going to go as well. And you can see last year he only scored a few tries, which contributed to him not going as well. And he did start fairly well at 5/8 with 40, 45 and 59, but then come back in the centres, and you can see his scores there of a couple of 47s, a 36, 15, 30, 14, 26, with a bunch of them in 2019, which is all we can go off with him just playing at 5/8 last year. But priced at 24, look, he's got a little bit of upside and his dual position, but probably averages 30, which isn't enough for me. Feagai, I don't know if I spelled his name right. Let's go Max. No, there he is. All right, 246. There's nothing to really go off anyway, just the 2 games last year. But it looks like Bird will get his starting spot, and if he doesn't, or if he gets injured at some point, Feagai's going to come in, and at 246 is going to be a decent option for anyone's sides. That's all we really need to say about him at this stage. Fusitua, people are still wanting him to bring him into their side at 270k, priced at 20. You look at his scores over the last bunch of years, there's so many teens, so many individual figures, there's a couple of 30s, but he just doesn't do as well. He had even look at these games here, he's got a double for 43, a try for 28, 2 tries for 31. It's just like, even if he gets the tries and if the team's going a little bit better, I don't think he's worth it for anyone's side. Timoko, We've spoken about him a little bit, but 275k, should get the starting spot for a couple of games at centre and should score well. So he's someone that's really interesting. If there's an injury to Croker or Curtis Scott over the year, he's going to be the guy that's going to come in and replace them. So I feel like he's a fairly decent option to have. You could start him in your centres for the start of the year, but as long as you have some coverage for when Croker comes out, you could leave him on there, and he should, if he plays sort of 5, 6, 7 games over the first 15, I think he'll do a job for your team and make you some money. So he's an interesting one. Some other average ones, 277k. We've got to talk about the guys that are cheap. They're playing in the centres, and Jesse Arthars is that man, priced at 21, but he plays for the Broncos. He's so up and down with his price, with his scores. I just see Leniu as a better option, who's an up and coming player. Obviously, Arthars is young too, but I don't see the upside when you can look at guys like Tom Opacic at 330k, moves from a Cowboys team into a better Eels side, and you can see he's a little bit more consistent. He has a floor in the 20s, which is where he's priced. So in games that he doesn't score tries, you'd expect somewhere in the 20s, and you can see in the trial game of the weekend he scored a triangle 42, which is great and puts him 17 points undervalued. If you average them out a bit, I'd expect somewhere in the 30s, so 33, 34, 35, and which is serviceable for a centre cash cow. As I said, moved into a better side in the Eels and should do fairly well for your team. All right, Eastern Masters. Played really well in the trial on the weekend, 386k. He has the pedigree to do really well. You can look back in 2019 and 2018 and smash it, and was the offloading machine, leading the league in offloads, and has the chance to do that again. But in a Cowboy set, that shouldn't be that great. I think he's not that great as an option at this stage, and he came off the bench too in the trial. So is he even going to get the starting spot with the Hammer playing centre? All right, Hopoate, I've spoken about a little bit. I think he's a decent option, but closer to 400k is just the slight issue for me. Dual position, priced at 29. He didn't do a lot in the weekend. The trial got 41. You can see he's someone with that floor around that 25 mark, which is priced just above that. But when he goes well, he got an 80 odd and a 90 odd a couple of years ago. Yeah, 93 with just the one try. So he's someone that can boom and bust a little bit, but it just depends how the Dogs go. If they go really well, I think he's going to score and set up a bunch of tries. If they don't, I think he could average around the 30 or 32. So probably a 40 would be what you'd be looking for on the upside, and a 30 on the downside. So he's a safe option. All right, Roberts. James Roberts, 336. Actually looked pretty good in the trial on the weekend. Just looked really manic though. Like he was running defenders and just like quickly offloading it, getting it away, and did score the try. But it's interesting. He's playing on the right side, and they're going to go left with Brooks, Lucy Leilua, Tommy Talau. All looked really strong, and I feel like that's the side they're going to go down a lot. Depends. Dewey looked good as well. So if he's going to be starting in that 6th position, they might send it down that way, and Dewey and Roberts could create a nice little combination there. But price of 336 is a bit easier to pick than someone like Hopoate in terms of being 390. Price at 25, it doesn't have to do a lot to do really well. I'd expect games of closer to 50 and then games around the 20 mark. So somewhere scoring in between 30 and 35, I think, is an average. And is that enough? I'm not exactly sure at this stage. As I said, it depends what's going to happen with Leniu and these cheaper guys that I'd personally bring in before someone a little bit more expensive. You can spend that extra money a little bit elsewhere. With centre being a very speculative position, if we're not exactly sure what some of these guys are going to get, where you look at someone like a Jake Trbojevic, some of these forwards just average the same every year and don't really get injured. So that's something to think about on that side of things. Alrighty, we've got Jack Bird. So price is 374. That's the only issue with him, just given the fact that he's had a few years off. Only played a couple of games in 2019. Very limited in 2018 as well, and then nothing at all last year. He's got the pedigree to do really well, and he looked a lot better in the trial on the weekend. So I'm just worried that, I think he can score about 30, 35 on most, 25 to 35 in most weeks, and then when he goes really well, somewhere around the 50 mark. But what's he going to be like coming back? And it's probably a bit scary to spend the money on him at centre at this stage. Moving along, we'll go to the wing fullbacks now. Not too many to go. Isaako just sneaks in at 399. Price at 30. His kicking goals, he looked fairly good on the weekend, looked really strong, created some attacking stats. Obviously, it was against the Cowboys, but if you look at his scores at the start of last year, he was kicking goals at that time too, 63, 34, 44, 20 and 46 and 21 were his fullback stats last year, which puts him at an average of in the high 30s, which puts him close to 10 points underpriced, which is really interesting for someone like Isaako. If the Broncos go a lot better, I think he could do really well, but you can see what happens to them in the second half in the trial, and I expect that to happen against the good teams, and guys like Isaako and Tessie New not doing as well in those times. So I find it really scary if I was to pick both of them on my side. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. I don't know if I can do Tessie and Jermaine. All right. Interesting one was Kennedy. Will Kennedy actually played really well on the weekend, and it looks like he's improving as a player year in, year out. Like he had a decent time of things last year. At certain points, he actually started the year really well. You can see in 2020, 39, 34, 32, 239s, a 40, 35, and that included 3 tries. So nothing crazy before having a bunch of lower games when the Sharks were struggling a bit. He wasn't even running it really at all in those first few games. If you can average closer to over 100 metres, you can expect some tackle busts and some decent scores out of Kennedy. His ball playing was a lot better as well, out with Ronaldo on that left side. So he's an interesting option, but at 377, I'd probably pick someone like Hopoate over him. What else we got here? All right, Remus Smith. All right, someone that's 300k is just slightly overpriced for what I'd expect from him. He's going to be on the wing for the Storm, and he has to score a lot of tries, I think, this year, closer to averaging to 1 a game for him to make a lot of money, which I don't think he's going to do. Simmonson we spoke about. At 246 is why everyone's bringing him in. He's still owned by 12.5% of people. Just won't score that well. Has to score a lot of tries again. I think he's probably a slightly worse option than Remus Smith, which is not good. Almost there, guys. Jason Saab should get a chance at some point in the year in a Manly Seagull side, maybe over someone like Ruben Garrick at some point of the year. But he's going to be interesting for our sides out there if he does happen to get a chance. It sounds like I was listening to the Talking League podcast, and Josh Alloway was saying that how fast he is. He's the fastest in the club by far. So those type of guys usually get a chance and should be able to score some nice tries. He's played a few games and hasn't done amazing, but he's also a young fella, and you'd expect some improvement as you go along. Adam Pompey. Yeah, guys, I'm pretty happy with all those. I feel like that brings together a big bunch of our cash cow players to have a think about. Let me know what you think in terms of the cash cows, guys. What else did I have? Oh, I just had Ramsey. That's right, Ramsey to talk about. I knew I forgot a couple. Paddy Ramsey at 342. We need to get in there, and then the Hammer Hamisto was my last couple. So Ramsey looked solid on the weekend. Made a few tackle breaks and scored a decent try in there. But again, the Dragons are going to struggle this year, so I don't see as many points out of them. And then the Hammer at 356. Price at 27 is my issue for him. I think he in the centres he could average close somewhere in the 30 to 35 max, with a few really low games when the Cowboys struggle. So that'll be all, guys. That's the official Cash Cows list. I hope this really helps you guys, and you can check back in on that when you're making your team. And once team list comes out, just listen back to what I've said on these guys. If they get their spot, then they're a must-have, or they're not. And if they're on the bench, what to do with them there. Just try and use this as a nice guide. So, yeah, let me know what you think, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one. Have fun.